Hi everyone, Climbthany Waltano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Rick Ross and Meek Mill project, Too Good to Be True. This is a new, sudden collaboration from MAYBACH Music Group's biggest artists, Rick Ross and Meek Mill. The Miami and Philly legends themselves, they are really trying to have a celebratory moment here, which for sure on some level I think they deserve. Meek and Ross both started making waves in the 2000s, but respectively hit their strides commercially and artistically in the 2010s, at which point Ross brought Meek onto his MAYBACH Music Group label, where he quickly became the most notable artist outside of Rick Ross, of course. And over the next decade, while Meek and Ross were not the most dominant artists out there in the hip-hop scene, they were certainly there. Their presence was felt, whether it was a new mixtape or a banger single, a standout feature, a beef, a meme about pears. Creatively, they survived the absolute mosh pit that was the 2010s internet trap era of hip-hop. They made their money, they had their moment, and had better outcomes than most in the industry. But I still have to wonder with this project, what exactly is being celebrated here? Because while Meek and Ross are still going, I wouldn't necessarily say they're going strong. It's been a while since either of them have had a hot single or an influential album, plus their impact has been significantly diminished over the past 10 years. Plus the chances Meek or Ross are going to be doing anything new or exciting artistically on this project or into the near future, it's low. As I shoot this video, this record is currently looking at a 35K first week sales projection, and that's with the excitement these two would hopefully be creating by coming together here. By comparison, Tyler, the Creator, could fart and pull almost 50K. If there is something super positive to note with this new album, it's that Meek and Ross seem to be operating purely for themselves this time around, as I guess via their new record deal with Gamma Records for this project, they are set to own 100% on the masters of this thing. Still, it doesn't exactly fix the fact that this record feels like it's purely fan service for the crowd of listeners that Meek and Ross have assembled over the past decade and will be spending the next decade doing everything they can to hold on to, because I don't see how this record, or records like it, could possibly be expanding their fan base. And ultimately, I feel like a project like this is something that would have made more sense or popped off harder back in 2013, not so much 2023. I mean, hearing Meek Mill rap about Molly on one bar made me feel like I hopped in a time machine before I put this thing on. Same thing with hearing French Montana drop a hand on top of some bland synth horn arpeggios. Because on this project, Meek and Rick couldn't sound more out of step with what is currently at the forefront in rap. And I suppose in some respects that is a good thing. It's kind of a breath of fresh air to hear two artists who are both seasoned in their own right, seem to care about being on tempo and having bars that are actually intelligible. Certainly in Meek's case with his trademark shouty delivery, he does not want to let the instrumental do all the work. But by that same token, these very grim, flashy blockbuster anthems about money and power, they're fine, but they also bring nothing new to the table for these two respectively. And there are only a few moments like the song Pillow Talk where they sound like they're at the top of their game. So while Meek and Rick have a lot of collective experience, for sure, it's not exactly compounding on this album in an interesting way, even if their chemistry together works. What's even worse is that there are some key moments on this record that on the surface look expensive, but sound cheap when you get deep into the details, like on the track Go to Hell featuring Beam and also production duo Cool and Dre. And it's got a lot of songwriter credits for something that sounds like a total mess. The instrumental has these oddly blaring synthesizers as well as a vocal chop from that Tears for Fears track Shout, which is laced into the instrumental in a very basic, very obvious way. The Beam chorus feels more like a placeholder than it does something that you would legitimately find yourself singing to or singing after the song is over. Meanwhile, Meek and Ross's vocals ride awkwardly high in the mix as well, or sometimes even super low depending on what song you're listening to here. Some of the engineering jobs on these tracks hit like a fake designer watch, or like a new Fast and the Furious movie where you know a very big budget is going into something that has such high melodrama and a lot of tacky, meaningless excess. Like with the track track They Don't Really Love You, where Rick Ross is upset because I guess people don't really love him. Despite the fact that I don't think he couldn't possibly be more respected among the hip-hop community broadly as a vet at this point. I mean, he's not exactly a figure of controversy. Still, I suppose being a bit paranoid doesn't necessarily stop this one from being one of the catchier songs here. We do not hear Meek on this track, but we do catch him on the track Dead Last, where over very dramatic instrumentation he can be heard complaining about having to cut a girl off because she's like fucking regular dudes, which is a choice, I guess. Meanwhile, Rick Ross is waxing poetic about Birkin bags, homicides, paying people off like he's living his life in a generic mafia boss movie. And look, while I have my complaints, these are actually moments on the record where Meek and Rick are doing stuff that's memorable. As sometimes we have these very breezy slow jams that wash in and wash out with the tide, like Fine Lines and Gold Medals. There are some scant bangers in the mix of this track list as well that, while they do hit hard to start, they end so quickly that they don't really leave much of an impression. Lyrical Easy is an example. However, I don't want to give the impression that this record just kind of runs through with no highlights whatsoever. The opener, SHAQ and Kobe, while maybe a bit too predictable for a Meek and Rick song, it is one of the stronger moments here, both instrumentally and lyrically. Also, 800 Carats is a wild trap banger with this weird deflated flow from Meek. That is fun and flashy. There's also Above the Law, which has a DJ Khaled on it. Tiana Taylor, too, who kills it on the chorus. And this is one of the biggest moments of fun on the entire record, where Meek and Rick are throwing down on this kind of throwback G-Funk beat that sounds really good. I'm kind of surprised we didn't get more weird detours on the record like this one, especially since both of these guys at this point are just kind of creating for themselves. They don't have to narrow their sound and style down into something so reductive, especially since, again, they're doing it to own the masters. They could really try whatever. Meek's verse on Iconic is one of the most personal and shining on the entire record in terms of lyricism. From the tragedy of his son asking about his granddad, to talking about going from sharing grams to sharing stocks. Also that bar about how one of his youngins shot another one, he's in a weird spot. From here, we have a relatively strong closer with the track In Love With The Money featuring Future, which sounds like a super, super grimy and filthy mixtape cut from the mid-2010s. Even Future himself sounds like he's going back to his Monster era on this one. Look, I'll say this, there's more highlights than there are outright flops on this record, and the vast majority of what's here, it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. The issue is ultimately that this project could have been a lot better than it is. It's not the fireworks it could have been. It's not the blowout it could have been. And Meek and Ross here really had an opportunity, in my opinion, to drop a project even stronger than Her Loss with 21 Savage and Drake. Especially since, like, they have more in common artistically. There is a longer creative history between the two together. I think their styles and vocals and intensities contrast but also complement one another. But despite all of those positives, there was just so much lost potential on this record due to weak mixes, generic beats, creative stagnation, a lack of memorable choruses, and as a result, this thing ended up just being more average than great. I'm feeling a light 5 on this album. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Rick Ross, Meek Mill, forever.